करना है या फिर जब हमें रॉ मटेरियल मिल गया है तब से स्टार्ट करना है, ठीक है। तो जो सर फ्लो चार्ट्स दिखा रहे थे पिछली क्लासेस में, जो एक बाउंड्री थी उनकी, ही वाज टेलिंग अबाउट व्हाट शुड बी इनसाइड द बाउंड्री एंड व्हाट शुड बी आउटसाइड द बाउंड्री। वो एक सिस्टम बाउंड्री बनानी होती है, दैट इज कॉल्ड सिस्टम बाउंड्री ऑफ योर स्टडी, एंड दीज टू थिंग्स आर वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। ओके, नेक्स्ट स्टेप प्रेजेंटेशन से ही देख के बता दो, एटलीस्ट टेल मी समथिंग। तो नोट्स भी नहीं बनाए क्लास में? Second step, build life cycle inventory. You should know what is going into the system, what is coming out of the system. So you will prepare an inventory where you will write down all the raw materials, all the energy requirements, water, chemicals, and the output, the emissions, air, emissions to air, emissions to water, emissions to soil. You are going to measure each and everything, and you are going to write it down in your inventory. Okay. Third step. नहीं पता, कुछ नहीं पता. Third step is life cycle impact assessment, where you are going to study the impact of your product or process. So जो भी information मिली है यहाँ inventory से, जो भी data मिला है, you are going to feed it into the software and then you will get some graphs which you can analyze. बाद कुछ और step हो रहा है. You read this whole thing and define the goal and scope and prepare an inventory. पूरा पढ़ो, just try to understand this कि क्या process है, किस तरह से क्या goal and scope होगा तुम्हारा, क्या system boundary होगी, and then you prepare an inventory and then we will discuss it. Take 5 minutes. फर्स्ट स्टेप करो, एक सिस्टम बाउंड्री बनाओ which is nothing but a flow chart कि क्या हो रहा है, नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या हो रहा है, नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या हो रहा है. केमिकल प्रोसेसिंग में करते हैं ना, सिंपल एक फ्लो चार्ट बनाओ, देन वी विल डिस्कस.
Yeah, you are comfortable. So maybe you will be having some kind of repetition. Maybe you might knowing about molecules. But anyway, rest of the class. So I'll focus a little more on molecules, and then since we have only two more lecture classes left, I'll try to take one extra if all of you agree. Then no, he says no. So I do not know how much I will be able to cover for remaining 3 theories, but then that will be the part of self-study. Okay. So basically, let's just look at this statement. It came by economists in 1974. If the present growth trends in the world population, industrialization, pollution, food production and resource depletion continued unchanged, the limits to the growth on this planet will be reached sometime within the next 100 years. The most probable results will be rather sudden and uncontrollable decline in both population and industrial capacity. If you look at this statement, it is a very gloomy statement, negatively sounding, right? And that is the point why we are discussing. Today also we are discussing Malthusian doctrine. This is a doctrine evolved in 200 years actually. So Malthusian gave this theory in late 18th century. since then, you can understand the importance of Malthusian in a way. As I mentioned that Malthusian doctrine and Malthusian term has become an adjective. Whenever someone is talking about all negative things, all doomsday thing, then it is known as Malthusian perspective. After he came up with a theory, immediately after that, economists they started arguing for or against Malthusian theory. Okay. He started with a very simple theory. Then few of them they criticized Malthus. Few of them they said that theory is very simple. Let us have a more complicated or complex theory or more factors to be counted. But it kept on growing, and today we have a kind of doctrine in the name of Malthus. So today we will discuss all that. So Malthusian postulates. He started with 3 postulates. Number 1, there is an absolute scarcity of resources. Nobody can argue against this. There are finite amount of material resources, right? We all agree on this. 2, human population grow exponentially without external intervention. That is also true, right? Up to some extent. What are those constraints? I will talk about that later. But this was his second postulate. Human populations grow exponentially without external intervention. Okay. Third, here many of you can argue against it. Technology is not the ultimate escape from problem of resource scarcity. But as I mentioned, these are the postulates by Malthus. We may have argument at least against 2 and 3. First, of course, it is beyond argument. Until unless we make the size of our cake big, and that is possible only if we capture Moon or Mars or some other planet, and then start using resources from those planets, right? So what he says that, what Malthusian suggested, that economic activity cannot grow indefinitely unless population growth or the rate of resource utilization effectively controlled. Rate of utilization can be controlled only by the population control, right? You cannot have population and ask them not to consume anything. They will consume, right? Limit to economic growth could come through either the depletion of key resources or large scale degradation of the natural environment. This is what is the doomsday theory. What he says that if you don't control anything, if population is not controlled, then ultimately what will happen? And this is going to happen naturally. So this limit to economic growth will happen. Either the key resources will be depleted, or there will be large scale degradation of the natural environment, which will have catastrophic effect on human population, right? Okay, so as I mentioned about this essay, the book, the essay on the principle of population as it affects the future improvement of mankind. Okay. So his population resource theory had 3 assumptions. Number 1, this we will be trying to explain his doctrine through a very simple example. So what he is saying, that natural resources are, first of his postulate was that natural resources are limited. So we will be trying to understand this with a natural resource, that is arable land. What is arable land? The land on which agriculture can be performed, right? So total amount of land available for agriculture is fixed. His first postulate. Second, what he says that the human population grow exponentially without external intervention. So here we are taking that growth of population is limited by the amount of food available for subsistence. Subsistence means survival, right? So that is the That is, so the first thing is that population will remain growing uncontrolled. Second, he talked about limit to economic growth could come through either the depletion of key resources, right? So we combining these two and saying that growth of population limited by the amount of food available for subsistence, and third, human population invariably increase where the means of subsistence increase. That is also, we have the second postulate of Matthews, that your population will keep on growing. So as the means of subsistence increases, population will increase. So the controlling factor is nothing but subsistence, means of subsistence, availability of resources for survival. In this case, it is the food. Okay, the example we are taking. So to explain it more, so the population is growing. So where is the contradiction? Contradiction is that population is growing geometrically, 2, 4, 8 times. Means of subsistence growing arithmetically, 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. And that is why there is an imbalance. So because population is growing exponentially but not the means of subsistence. So this imbalance will result, and how this problem will be resolved? It will be resolved, it can be resolved by two ways. One is negative intervention, another is positive intervention. Negative intervention is when you are trying to do something, when trying to stop something. And when you are trying to stop something, that means you are trying to control the population growth, right? And that can be done through, postpone of marriages, abstinence from sex, etc. or adopting those measures through which we can control the population. This is the negative way. This is not the natural way. That's why we are calling it negative intervention, right? If we do not do that, or if we are not able to do that, what will happen? The problem will be resolved with a positive intervention. And what is the positive intervention? Positive intervention is long run vice and misery. That is, for example, famine or drought or whatever. I mean, external stresses which will lead to catastrophic events, and population will be reduced. So it is basically the very basic theory of ecology, right? So in ecology also, when we look at the food chain, so if one species grows exponentially, what happens? The food for that species comes in shortage, and then there is a catastrophic event. This species is controlled. So the same theory he applied with the humans. So this theory is called dismal doctrine of Malthus, or more formally Malthus iron law of wages. Iron law of wages means per capita output. Let us try to understand. This can be easily understood by this graphical representation. So what we have replaced, this is the agriculture output, let's say Q, and Q by L is real per capita output of wages in short, or right? X-axis we have population, and population in this graphical example we have indicated by the labor, right? Because labor is directly proportional to population size. So what we can say from this, what we can learn from this graph, as the population increases, initially output increases more than the rate of population increase. Okay. So this is the part where we have quality resources available with us, right? All the resources are not untapped yet. Population is increasing. So in case of agriculture, you can assume that there is a arable land available, but not all land is under cultivation. So as the population is growing, we are bringing more and more arable land into our. Or in case of mining, you can imagine that have the mines with good quality of ore are still not explored, and we are exploring new mines, right? So with increase in population, the output, per capita output actually increases, and then it reaches to a optimal level. So this is the optimal level, that is the best, point where we have the highest per capita output, right? Okay, but then what happens after this? So after this, the quality of resources started coming down. Let's say we are now explored or exploited all good quality of land. Now further increase in the labor is not going to add in the productivity. Production will be more, but productivity will be less, right? So this is the law of diminishing productivity, right? So with more labor input, we will not be able to have the same output as you were. So let's say I am getting 1000 unit output with 100 labor. With one increase in labor, let's say 101, my output is increasing by 10 unit, let's say 1010. Another addition of labor, that is the 102nd labor, is giving me output. It's not giving me 10 unit output, it is giving me 7 unit output or 8 unit output, right? So this we all know, we have discussed so many times, this marginal theory. So this real per capita output start declining, and then Malthus talked about this. So in this growth model, we reached to a population level L2. Beyond this, what happens? Beyond this, if population grows, then the output will come, so this average or per capita output will come down this particular point. This horizontal line actually indicates the Malthusian margin. Basically, this is the minimum output, which is per capita output, which is required for the survival. So see, there are 2 points. One is this is the best situation. We have the highest per capita output, and this is the output which is minimum needed for the survival. It's just like that. Let's say if a man needs 1 kg of any resource for the survival, beyond 1 kg he will not be able to survive, or below 1 kg he will not be able to survive. So this is that 1 kg, right? So in long run, what Malthus is actually saying, that this is the point of equilibrium. Why? If we are left to this, what is this third point saying? Human population invariably increases when where the means of subsistence increases. So, if we are operating somewhere here, still the per capita output is more than the subsistence level of food. So there is a scope of population increase. So population will increase. Will move. So in this direction. Once we reach to this, once we come below to this, then what will happen? Now we are below the subsistence level of food. That food is not available. I mean that subsistence level of food is not available to the human population. So there will be a catastrophic impact, or human population will be reduced to back to this level. So we'll keep on operating around this. Right? As we move leftward, again the population will increase. Again, so this is the point of equilibrium, as Malthus, explained by Malthus' doctrine. Okay. Right. So as I mentioned that Malthus today also it is one of the most discussed theory or doomsday theory in economics. Its criticism started immediately after the publication of his essay. Right? We'll talk about that criticism. Ricardo was the first economist who criticized this theory. But criticism was not on the. So basically, there are two things. If you analyze Malthus' theory, one, he is saying that he is establishing the fact that there is a physical limit to growth. And today also nobody is disagreeing on that. Everybody agrees on that yes, there are limited resources available and we cannot grow uncontrolled, unchecked. Now the only discussion is happening, what are the limiting factors? What is that particular limit? Whether technology can augment or can help us in or not. Whether the population is responsible for, or population is the only factor which is responsible for this limitation. Right? So whole discussion is not about the basic of the Malthus, that is, yes, we have a limitation of biophysical limit. So if you analyze Malthus' theory, it talks about this basic thing, the limitation of the growth. Second, he emphasized or he made population responsible for everything. So he is just talking about population. What is the solution? Control the population. Why this problem is happening? Why this limit of growth? Because of the population. Right? So he overemphasized on population, and that is what Ricardo actually suggested. So Ricardo also didn't say that there is no limit of economic growth. He accepted that. But he criticized Malthus by saying that Malthus is overemphasizing on the role of population. We'll come to that. So the criticism of Malthus' theory overall, one is that it is oversimplistic because it is just talking about population. It is ignoring the institutional factors that affect the population growth. Okay, let's understand this. And this is still, as I mentioned, that in economics, in development economics, growth and population, it's a independent paper for discussion, right? What is the population rate of population growth in developing countries in general and developed countries? Developing countries is more. While the resources available in means of subsistence, which Malthus is saying that means of subsistence will lead to increase in population. If means are available, then population will increase. But what we see, the countries where means of subsistence are available in too much abundance, like developed countries, the growth in population is actually checked. They are not growing. In fact, many of the developed countries today we know that they are running under negative growth of population, isn't it? So this is not the fact that, this is always not the fact that if means of subsistence are increasing, population will keep on growing. So this, by saying that population is growing exponentially, we are actually ignoring so many institutional factors that affect population growth. Right? We will discuss about this theory, very interesting theory. See, it depends on how do we, I mean, of course, a child is a commodity for a family, for a couple. Child is a commodity. But now it depends how the family looks at the commodity. Right? We discussed the theory of inferior goods, isn't it? What is the theory of inferior goods? What are inferior goods?
When
Blank.
income increases, their consumption
Right,
increases.
right. So there are many economists saying that children are inferior goods. If income is increasing, their demand is decreasing. And this we see with a lot of evidences. So there are many institutional factors, right? Society also controls this way. There are rules and governance, mode of governance which controls. So, for example, the minimum age of marriage, right? So there are so many factors which are not considered by him. 3. Overlooks the role of technology in dealing with resource scarcity. Okay, come back to this. This example, we have limited land, population is increasing or demand is increasing. Can't we increase production or productivity by involving or by doing advancement in technology? Maybe farming technology, maybe improvement in the inputs, variety of seeds, fertilizers, insecticide, pesticide, tilling method, harvesting methods and all. So the farm technology can really improve the productivity. So which is completely ignored by markets. Right? So what will happen? See, by improving the technology, by technology intervention, if we cannot do anything else, we will not be able to change this. This will remain here. We can pull this up, isn't it? So at least this point of intersection will not come to me at L2, but it will come to me, it will occur at L3, a much higher population, right? So by technology, we can delay the whole process. We are not saying that the limit will still be there, but then we can delay the whole thing. The third problem, so it is being criticized by economists who are saying that too simplistic assumptions about population growth. It is criticized by technologists who are saying that you are ignoring our role. And third, ecologists also, they criticize it. They say that Malthus is not explaining the effect of economic growth on natural ecosystem. Right? He's just talking about, so maybe when we say the means of subsistence growth arithmetically, maybe not. Maybe this increase is again with the decreasing rate. Because there can be a negative impact of population, and this has been proved by various empirical. So for example, we know that with increase in population, load of pollution increases. You remember the theory that there is a the waste assimilative capacity, and that decreases with increasing pollution load. So with population increase, even if technology consumption all remain at same level, pollution load will increase, and with increasing pollution load, the assimilative capacity of nature decreases. Right? So you cannot say that there won't be any impact on ecology. Right? So all of them they criticized, but as I mentioned that Malthus is still relevant because everybody is still talking about. Yes, it is very easy to say by looking at, so in 1798 we talked about this doomsday, and we are still waiting about that. We are still waiting for this doomsday. It has never reached to us. Okay. if I look at few projections of FAO, right, Food and Agriculture Organization, who are the apex body as far as food and agriculture is concerned, this globally, right? They are doing a lot of projection. They are suggesting a lot of policies to different governments, and the projection is about the demand of the grains for food production, and then they suggest that what to do, what kind of intervention should be there, right? So many of these articles in late 20th century, if you read them, they will say that within 50 years there will be a huge crisis. The storage capacity is decreasing, our productivity is not increasing as the rate population is increasing, and so on. Right? And time to time there are crises also. It is not that there are not crises. So you must be remembering, 2 years back there was a huge crisis, wheat crisis around the world, right? When this Russia-Ukraine war started, so Ukraine is a supplier of wheat, the major supplier of the wheat. India is also one of the major suppliers of the wheat, right? But then India decided not to curtail the export, to control the prices, domestic prices, right? So for a moment, for a certain time, there was a crisis around the world. Then India took a step. Then India released the wheat to poor countries, but they didn't allow export to the developed countries. And that was one of the reasons geopolitically, Europe and India, they actually had a kind of tussle. Right? But that's a separate part. But what I am trying to say that there are some evidences here and there saying that yes, there is a food crisis. There are other people also, those who say that these people are actually wasting resources. We really do not need this kind of storage. There are statisticians, those who are doing some calculation and projecting that. So you can find out how much grains we are storing in our FCI godowns. Sometimes there are advantages. Like for example, during the COVID time, government took advantage of those storages and they started distribution of 5 kg wheat or rice to a huge population, something around 80 crores, and this is still continuing. And one of the reasons, maybe the government is continuing with that, I do not know, but one of the reasons may be that government is spending huge amount in storage of these grains. And every year there is a huge loss for these. So this school of thought says that these people, those who are creating a very negative project, those who are making a lot of negative projections, they are actually wasting a lot of resources. So there is no need of this much amount of agriculture production. But what we know that yes, there is a possibility of. So those who support technology, they say that there are no evidences. In 200 years, we are still waiting for this doomsday. Every decade there is a report saying that energy resources are getting finished off. Food grain crisis will be there next decade or coming few decades. But it is not happening. Right? But we cannot ignore the fact that yes, one day it may happen. Why? Because today also, if you look at the distribution of resources, it is not evenly distributed. Few people are consuming more and few people are consuming very, very less. And probably because of these people, those who are consuming very less, we are still not feeling the heat of it. So that is the importance of or the relevance of Malthus theorem or Malthus doctrine. Let us talk about the evolution of his simplistic theory into a more complex Malthusian doctrine. So the first addition was from his opponent economist, Ricardo. So Ricardo said that overemphasis on population is the problem of, very interesting thing happened during that time in Britain. So, and Ricardo tried to analyze that, okay, and then only, he came up with the theory, and then he criticized Malthus also. So what happened in Britain? So you know that British agriculture is the land system in Britain is manor and peasants, which they try to implement in India also. So in India also they created sort of manors, jamindars, right? So Indian land system was completely different than the British land system. So Indian land system, ancient Indian land system was peasants were the owners of the land. Or who were the peasants? Those who are cultivating the land. Ownership was as per the activity. You own the land only if you are cultivating. So if you stop cultivating consecutively for few years, depending on the rules, then this land you will not be owning this land anymore. You will go to Gram Sabha or whatever the body, temple or whatever, and then it will go to someone who is not. So traditionally in India, farmers were the owners of the land. But in Britain, land was owned by manors, right? And then they were giving it to the peasants for cultivation. So same system they applied in India also. That is why how jamindars came up during the British period. Right, so what was happening that time in Britain? There was a crisis and the government tried to import grains. Right? So these manors, they were opposing it, saying that we should be given more resources so that we can grow the land. But anyway, that's something different. So what Ricardo suggested that it is not the population, it is the quality of the resources which is a problem. So what you can understand, when we start exploiting any resource, it is fundamental that we will be exploiting the best resources first, right? Which requires minimum input, minimum labor, minimum capital, all other inputs minimum. So we try to use the best resources first. And what Ricardo is suggesting that best resources are limited. Okay? Once we consume the best resources, then we go for the marginal resources or inferior resources. And this is the problem. When we go for the inferior resources, then input requirement will go up. We will require more inputs. Labor, technological input, or whatever. Once we consume marginal resources, we move to sub-marginal resources. Further, this will be increasing. Further input will be increasing. So, productivity is decreasing not because of population, but because of the resource availability. And as far as role of population is concerned in this case, he recognizes the role of population up to the extent it affects the demand. So as you increase the population, demand will increase. demand will increase, then there will be stress on the resources. So then only you will move from best resources to the second best resources, isn't it? If population increase is not there, demand won't increase. Right? Okay. So he recognized the variability of resources, resource quality. So very quickly I'll just explain this. So basically this is the farmland, this is the price. So this is the first demand curve, E naught A. This is D naught is our original. So we operate, so when we are at this demand, the demand of the farmland is at D naught, so we operate at this. C naught is the best quality land available to us. So that is the price for production. Okay, we operate at this point. Now what happens once the demand increases beyond this? So this is C1 minus C naught are the marginal resources. They are not the best quality resources. That means the land quality is now degraded land quality. Okay. Demand increases, so we now operate at P1. The production price goes up. It goes up because land quality is poor. We need more input, more labor, more capital, more better technology or whatever, more technological input. So we start operating at this point. Right? P1 is the price. Further, demand increases from D2. We now operate at P2. See what is happening. So initially, I have a land. So the rent I am getting as per the cost of production. Okay, there is no mismatch. Now, cost of production here is P1. Okay. So the owner of this land, the cost of production was P0, but actual cost of production is P1 because of these inferior resources, right? Because of this, now we are operating at this. So those who own this best quality land, they will be charging this rent, isn't it? This is their actual benefit. So market cost is P1, their cost of production is P0. So P1 minus P0 is their rent, their benefit, isn't it? Similarly, when we operate at this level, what is happening? The owner of this land, they have this as a profit, or this plus this, both. And the owner of marginal land, they have this. So basically, what he is saying that it is the rent which is actually controlling the right. So this is what he says, that the steady increase in rent or real cost as a quantity of land or any other extractive resource decline, according to Ricardo, it is steady increase in the rent and as land use expense that would ultimately stifle medium long-term economic progress. Population is relevant only to the extent it has an impact on what happens to demand. Okay. So there are two major variations came to this theory. One was given by Ehrlich, another was given by Comner. So combined together, this neo-Malthusian theory is known as. It is again a part of Malthus doctrine. So, Ehrlich-Comner theory of Malthusian variation. So these economists, I'll just give you a brief on that and then we'll stop. They actually, when they analyze the problem of biophysical limit of growth, they try to analyze ecology. And they recognize the fact that it is not only the resource which is important. Waste assimilation capacity is also important. Ecological functioning is also important. Means if one particular species is missing, so that missing species is not only important as a resource, but it is also important in the functioning of ecosystem. So Ehrlich and Comner, or the variants of Matthew's theorem, they recognize this overall understanding on environment and ecology. So they said that let us understand the impact of economic growth on the environment as such, and then see what kind of model we can propose. Okay, we'll continue this in next class. I think I need one, although he is not agreeing, but I still feel that I need one extra class, but we'll decide after 11th class. I mean 11th class on 11th. Next class we have on Monday, na? Monday is on 11th. Oh, of course, online. I am talking about extra class online, not physical. I know that physical mode is not possible. Any elective physical mode extra class is not possible. We have explored this so many times. Thank you. So, what about the status of assignment submission? I hope second and third. Both. NCA PPT not uploaded? We'll upload. We'll upload not only LCA PPT but also the ISO 1.0.
Second assignment की डायरी 5 है ना?
Code also. ISO.
चल
अपना रिकॉर्डिंग है क्लास मिस किए थे आपके पास ऑनलाइन क्लास की रिकॉर्डिंग है
चल यार
ऑनलाइन सब नहीं मतलब आपने कभी ऑनलाइन कोविड में लिया होगा इसमें जो 3-4 क्लास चल ठीक है 3 में लिया था क्लास सर मेजर के बाद कौन सा फ्लोर है चौथा आज पेज खोल देगा ये नहीं होगा दिमाग है यार
खिला दे रहे हैं